over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Amy. And hello, everybody. Nice to see so many familiar and friendly faces. This is a great network. And thanks so much, Amy, for continuing this. As Amy said, I remember going to these BCN meetings when we had them at lunch times with a lady called Valerie Chase, if anyone remembers Valerie Chase. So that was ages and ages and ages ago. And I'm so glad that Amy took up the baton and she's breathed new life into this network. So thank you, Amy, for organizing this. So everybody, I'd like to start off with a question. Amy, could we go to the poll, please?
Right, everyone, you're going to be seeing on your screen shortly a poll, so please fill it in.
Here's the question, everyone. I'm just curious, why did you come to Switzerland? Were you born here? Because it's the best country in the world. And right now I'm speaking to you from Valais. You can't see the view behind me, but it's absolutely magnificent. It makes coming to visit my mother-in-law palatable. It's the best country in the world. You came here for chocolate, you came here for money, you came here for cows, or none of the above. Please vote. Let's see why you came to Switzerland.
And the poll is anonymous, just in case you're wondering. Just one
there we are.
There we go.
None of the above. Oh, so somebody was born here. Some of you think it's the best country in the world. Nobody came for the chocolate. Oh no, that disappoints me. A couple of you came for money. Maybe one other person came here for the same reason that I did. I came here for cows, believe it or not. I was working for a small company called Novartis. Some of you might have heard of that, back in 1998 to 2000 in the UK. And the reason why I came here is that somebody asked me, one or two of you might know him, Arthur Einzeler, told me, I've got this job for you. It's dealing with issue management for the new company, Syngenta. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've got to refuse this because this is just too big for me. But he said, no, come to Switzerland and just try it out. And the reason why I came here was because of a story about cows and Arthur Einzeler. He was dealing with Greenpeace at the time because Syngenta did leave. And it was, oh, hang on. It's a lesson for me. I should have left my phone off. So I came here because of cows. And here's the story. Arthur Einzeler had a private detective looking out for when Greenpeace were going to attack on genetically modified crops. And he found out from his private detective that they were going to bring some genetically modified corn and dump it outside the incinerator at the old Novartis site in San Johan, and demand that Novartis then incinerate the genetically modified corn. But he found out about this and he said, how can we deal with this? And he phoned his friend, who just happened to be the head of Basel Zoo, and asked if he could borrow a couple of elephants. And his friend said, no, Arthur. He said, this is all very well, but the elephants are washing their hair. So Arthur thought again, and he also knew the people that owned the best dressed cows in Switzerland, the herd of Simmental cows. Amy, could we have the next slide, please? These folks here. And it's funny, when I dug up this photo, it's from 2001, which is the year that I moved to Basel. So he shipped this herd of best dressed cows over from the depths of Switzerland to behind the incinerator on the St. Johann site. And he hid them behind the incinerator. So the next morning when Greenpeace turned up with their truckload of genetically modified corn, the gates opened and Arthur welcomed them with his herd of cows. And the cows went outside and obviously started to eat the genetically modified corn. And the headline on the Basel Zeitung the next day obviously had these beauties on the front. And it said, genetically modified corn is great for our best cows. And I thought, this is the kind of guy that I want to work for. So yes, Arthur, I will try and come to Switzerland. And I did. And 20 years later, almost 20 years later, I'm still here. So that's my reason for cows. Next slide, please, Amy. Of course, I spent quite a few years dealing with these kinds of people at Syngenta. And it was kind of a great experience in communications, especially in issue management. From Syngenta, I moved to Roche. So then I was working at Roche for 11 years. You might have heard of that company as well. But it really fired up my passion for helping scientists to get their message across. What started my passion for scientists to help get their message across was actually a lady. She was a female, and she was the second most famous female in 1996. Second most famous female in the world in 1996. And she was this lady. Next slide, please, Amy. Dolly the clone sheep, that's the one on the left. I was part of the team in a PR agency in the south of England that helped to launch Dolly the clone sheep to the world. We were only 9 people in an attic room in a place called Basingstoke. And that was also a great baptism of fire in communications as well, dealing with thousands of press calls in the first week that Dolly was communicated. But it was a real moment in time when I could be part of that. And that's what started my passion for helping scientists in particular to communicate. Next slide, please, Amy. So this is my company now in Basel, helping people to communicate their messages clearly. I specialize in communication training, and some of you may know that I also do a lot on storytelling, which is the topic of today's session. It seems to be a bit of a business buzzword. And for those of you who know me well, buzzwords, I have a great relationship with business buzzwords. Amy mentioned my TED talk, and it was a talk about business jargon. But in this session, we'll aim to demystify some of the myths about storytelling and show that it's a natural human thing that we can all do. The aims of the next 50 minutes or so are to uncover some essential storytelling techniques, to practice telling our own stories, and in a moment, we'll put you into breakout groups. We'll come together, talk about how you spice stories up, and finally, you'll have a chance to spice up your stories. We'll finish off with a chance for questions and discussion, and then if we have time left, there will be a networking session like BCN was set up to do. So I would encourage you to turn on your camera if you haven't already for the breakout sessions. But first of all, I'd like you to go to the chat, please. Go to your chat function, and I'd like to hear from you why you think storytelling is important in the world. Let's see what ideas you have. Memorable messaging. Yes, the title of this hour was to make your messages stick, and stories are a great way of helping them to stick. To share meaning. And I think we said in the rider for this, as humans, we make sense of the world through telling stories. We have done for millennia. People remember them, resonate. Emotion is something that, in particular, a lot of scientists tend to struggle with, and helping them with stories is a great way to bring out that emotion. Talking about values, bringing words to life, to identify, to belong. So stories are a great way of creating a tribe or a culture, makes complex things explainable and memorable, connects to the topic, brings personality through. Yes, all these reasons we do storytelling. Now, I'd like to ask you as well, how can we as communications professionals use stories in our business? And how do you use stories? Here's the next question. Please go to the chat again and put some ideas down there. It might be the same as what you've already put. Bringing people together. Up to 20 times more memorable than facts alone. Thank you for that statistic, Adrienne. It's one I might use in the future. Create interest. Help make corporate messages mean something, yes. Anything else? Use them frequently, connect to the industry you work for. I've used stories to steer away from corporate dullness, yes, to help leaders be authentic. And this is a point that I use quite often. If a leader tells a story, it helps to build that connection much more than facts and figures. Enables virality. Good stories tend to be retold. That's right, Adrienne. They tend to be retold. It's stories that people can remember. They're sticky. They pass it on, connect to customers. All these things. So these are the reasons why we as communications people love to tell stories, because there are solid business reasons for doing that. Now, I'd like you to, please, Amy, could you bring on the next slide? Here's your turn to practice. When I run my storytelling courses, these are the things, some of the essential ingredients that I find very important. First of all, as we're all business communications people, we need a point or a message or a moral. What is the point of your story? We all get paid to communicate. Sometimes I get paid to entertain, but generally the things that we do when we tell stories are there to get a business message through. So they need a point, a message, or a moral. The next important thing is contrast and tension. And this is really important, particularly in companies, because very often we hear company stories that are all positive, positive, positive. We had success in this area. We had success in that area. A really great product launch, but we don't hear what went wrong. And those are the most interesting parts. Contrast, tension, and drama. Paul, you said drama early on. Definitely a story needs good drama. Details, we mentioned details already, but not too many. A plot or a storyline, so that we know where it's going. Definitely you need a plot or a storyline. Very often we see speakers who stand up and say, wander with me through the chasms of my mind, and you don't know where they're going. So we need a plot or a storyline. Suspense is always good in a story, and you don't have to start a story at the beginning. You can start where the action is and keep people in suspense. Somebody mentioned in the chat before, characters. Adding to that, dialogue you might include in your stories to make it more real. Here's one that we don't often have in companies, but this is really interesting: scandal. Are there any scandals? Particularly if you're learning lessons, if you're using a story to teach lessons, is there a scandal that's happened in the past? I'm not sure there's any Basel companies with any scandals, not to mention vitamins, but scandals that might have happened that people could learn from. And we've mentioned before, unexpected elements of surprise. So these are just some essential story ingredients that I would suggest you have in your story to spice it up, make it spicy and memorable. I have another exercise for you. In the same groups, we'll put you back in the same groups. I'd like you to choose one of your stories that you shared before. Choose one story that your group would like to share with the rest of the group afterwards. And in your groups, figure out how your storyteller can spice up their story to land the message. This is adapted from a book by Stephen Denning, who's a great storyteller. The Leader's Guide to Storytelling he wrote. And this is just something that I thought was a really useful kind of crib sheet that you might like for when you're trying to choose the right story for a different situation. So you can read this at your leisure afterwards. Amy, could you put the next slide on, please? And again, there's just some additions to that there that might just help you when you're choosing the right story for the right situation. And the next slide, Amy, please. So as I said, you'll get those. This is just a flyer for a workshop that I've currently worked on about reconnecting your team through storytelling. Again, you'll get this afterwards, so all the details are in the document. Reconnecting your team through storytelling, and this can be delivered virtually 100% or part virtual, part live as well, if you're interested. So now I'd like to thank all of you for your contributions.